To explain the science and the phenomenon of distant healing, we can look at some great experiments that have taken place so that we can create a sense of how this whole phenomenon functions and works. So there was the curious case of GOES-8 and GOES-10, two satellites whose job it is to be a series of 10 satellites. And these two particular satellites, their function is to detect and measure the electromagnetic field of the planet. The field of the planet, and knowing that field helps us to predict weather patterns, because the electromagnetic field of the planet determines the weather patterns of the planet. So research was done, measurements were taken, and one day then it was realized that the electromagnetic field of the planet had changed and altered. And it altered and changed when the twin towers were hit by the two planes. And the researchers who monitor the results from GOES-8 and GOES-10 geoelectronic observational satellites, their conclusion was that this was just an anomaly. It couldn't be related to the twin towers being hit by the two airplanes. So they decided to go back and look through the historical data to see if the same effect had taken place in the past. And to their absolute shock and amazement, they discovered that the electromagnetic field of the planet had been altered and changed previously to almost the same magnitude that it was changed when the two planes hit the twin towers. And this previous result happened and occurred when the world was informed that Princess Diana had died in a car crash. So all of a sudden then, they started to realize that the collective thinking of people around the planet was affecting the electromagnetic field of the planet, and that field of the planet determined the climate of the planet, which determines whether we eat, so it's warm enough to grow plants, or whether we freeze to death, whether there's going to be an ice age. So the field that surrounds the planet, it seemed, was affected by human conscious thinking. Then came along Rene with his groundbreaking experiment. And Rene built a random robotic computerized movement device about the size of a can of soft drinks. And he put this device into the center of a pen, and he had the camera above the pen filming the movement of this device. Now this device would move of its own volition, its own function. It decided where it was going to move and go. And the pen was probably the size of, let's say, 4 kitchen tables. And he watched and filmed as the device moved around the entirety of the pen. When that was finished then, he took some baby chick eggs, some chick eggs, and he placed those chick eggs in the pen next to the device. And as the baby chicks hatched from their eggs, they moved around the pen with the device because they deemed it to be its mother. So they created a sense of motherhood with this device. So all the chicks moved around the entirety of the pen with this device. Rene had built a pen next door to the original pen, and he removed the baby chicks from the pen, leaving the random robotic computerized movement device in its original pen. Moving the chicks to the pen next door. Between both pens he had a screen, so the chicks all huddled up to the screen and could see the device that they deemed to be its mother in the original pen. He then allowed the device to move around the pen again of its own volition, of its own determination. A computerized robotic device. And all of a sudden, he was shocked and stunned when the device stopped moving over the half of the pen where the chicks weren't present and hadn't placed their consciousness, their awareness and their presence, and only moved over the half of the pen where the screen was, housing the chicks on the far side of that screen. So all of a sudden then, it was determined that the collective consciousness of a baby chick and a group of baby chicks was affecting the movement of a random robotic computerized movement device. That delves into the reality, the science of quantum physics. Because from a quantum physics perspective, it says that matter, particle, is determined by and focuses on and is driven by consciousness. But it didn't say whose consciousness. It never said people. It never said ducks. It never said animals. It just said consciousness, it seems, in the experiments determines the material world. So from a perspective of quantum physics, matter collapses based on what's called a collapsing of the wave function into what it is that consciousness determines that matter should be and where that matter should be at a particular place in time. Now, it got even more curious because then came along Leonard head of the Rabin Medical Center. And Leonard decided to do an experiment on sick and ill people, and this is where the phenomenon of interconnectedness and distant healing came from. So Rene had taken the names of 3,300 people who had been through his medical center over a period of time, and they all suffered from sepsis, a hospital-bound infection, and sepsis can be fatal. So he took the statistics of these people and he put together what's called a control group. So he had a group of random people come into a control center, let's say a ballroom in a hotel, and he split them up into different groups. As he split them up into groups, he took these random names of these people who had been through his medical center who contracted sepsis, and he had them in a bucket, just individual slips in a bucket. He passed the bucket around the control groups, and as it went past each control group, they were to just take a random name out of the bucket and place it in the middle of their table. So each control group was segregated from the other control group, and they were all around the same table. So the first group of people had 750 names just for simple mathematics. Second group, 750, 750, 750. So there was 4 groups of people. The first group of people were asked to sit with their names and to place no focus and no intention on those names. Just completely ignore them. The second group of people were asked to feel what it would be like if these people in another place, in another time, being in hospital, suffering from sepsis, and feel what it would be like if they got well, if they recovered. The third group was asked to think but not feel about these people in this hospital getting well. The fourth group was asked to think and feel what it would be like for these people in this group in hospital to be well, to recover from sepsis. And the results again were outstanding, because the fourth group, the group who thought and felt these people getting well, it was discovered that that group of people in hospital had shorter hospital stay, lesser fatality, faster recovery than the other groups. So it was determined then that the distant collective thinking of people could affect the health of people in another country, in another place, in another environment. But weirdly, and this is where it gets really strange, is that these people were in hospital 10 years before the experiment was done. Now, so let's now talk about that phenomenon of a distant healing, so we can explain to you how that works. And nobody fully understands how that works. But science is opening up a door, and science is starting to reveal its hidden secrets to us. And it's doing it through human experiments that we're doing in research centers around the world. And it kind of goes like this. If I have a thought, I create what's called a vector in a linear space. And my thought can go out through the aerial, through my 7th energy center, into my 8th energy center, and my 8th energy center is connected to the electromagnetic field around my body. Now, electromagnetic fields are like magnets. They attract or repel, but fields are very communal. They're very neighborly, and they love to connect with other fields. So my field influences another person's field who's close to me. Collectively then, our fields influence other fields, and that collectivity of fields spreads right around the entire planet. The planet then has a field, an electromagnetic field. Our planet is connected to the electromagnetic field of the moon, of all the planets in the solar system. There is this interconnectedness. Now, if you try to figure it out in your head, you're not neurologically hardwired to absorb this information. That's why it's called a phenomenon beyond explanation. So therefore, if the collective thinking of people when the planes got hit and hit the Twin Towers affected the electromagnetic field of the Earth, if the collective thinking of chicks affected a computer, if the collective thinking of people made people well at a different time in a different place, well then, is it possible that we can now come along and place a fingerprint into the electromagnetic field and put that fingerprint in that field to allow that fingerprint of a clear intention affecting other people? And if illness is the disalignment and the unbalancing of an energy center, and an energy center, we have 114 energy centers in our body, 7 main energy centers and our 8th just outside the top of our head. If our energy centers affect the organs in our body, and our energy centers are spinning wheels of energy, and those energy centers have an electromagnetic field, and there's an interconnectedness, well then the phenomenon says that interconnectedness can tap into, let's say, the phenomenon called entanglement. And entanglement means that two things, for simplicity, can be affected and be completely at distant ends of the universe, and when we affect one, the other suffers the complementary opposite effect beyond time. So in other words, this interconnectedness, this entanglement is not governed by the classical physics and even probably the quantum physics, because there is a ratio between time, space, and the movement of light and the speed of light, said to be the fastest known thing in the universe. But it seems that entanglement is instant, no matter what the distance. So therefore, your thinking and a collective group of thinking can affect that electromagnetic field and send an intention to another person who is connected to that field for them to feel well, to feel better, to change, to alter their perceptions without even knowing that it's being altered for them, but on behalf of them.